Cover 3 tailgate.
What's going on, y'all? I'm Chip. I'm Bud Elliott, and that's Tom Fornelli. And Chip is on vacation in Florida, shooting TikToks and all that stuff. Talking basketball, which we tried one time on the show. It didn't really take. So let's keep talking football. We got Mike Renner from Pushing the Pile on today. I was on Pushing the Pile the other day down there in Lauderdale where Chip is. And let's little NFL draft talk. What's up, man? Welcome to the show.
Yeah, I saw Chip in the office and I was like, Chip, man, hey, great to meet you. And he's like, I'm like, what are you doing down here? He's like, yeah, I'm talking college basketball. I'm like, what? Didn't have any follow-up questions to that, but I was like, okay, go off.
All right. So first question off the bat as we talk NFL draft. Mike's an NFL draft guy, big time NFL guy. They've been talking free agency a lot on PTP. It's been a good discussion. Who are the Bears taking and why?
Ooh.
Tom and I are Bears fans now. I adopted the Bears. He's been a Bears fan.
Okay. Well, I'm a Packers fan. So I don't want them to take.
Okay. Why did we bring Mike on this show?
Yeah.
I'll just say the guy I don't want them to take is Kelvin Banks. I think he's the top tackle in this draft class. I think he'll definitely be there at 10 overall. And I think that's like the last piece. If you're building, if you're trying to bring over what they had in Detroit, that would be that. That would give you what they had in Detroit along that offensive line. So that's who I don't want them to take. So hopefully they pass on him and maybe take like a boomer bust defensive lineman because there's a bunch in this draft class.
I do think they're going to go that latter direction at this point.
All right. So we're trying to think like how the NFL draft relates to college football. And I think we can learn a lot about the NFL draft, but also, a lot about college football. Like on this show, we were like, hey, Riley Leonard, like not really an NFL guy. And, now it's like, more trended towards he's not really like he probably gets picked as we were saying, before the show. But let's stick on quarterbacks here because the scoring was way down this year in the sport of college football. And there's a lot of potential reasons why. But Mike, you and I were chatting down there in Lauderdale. And when I asked you today, do you want to be on the show? You're like, yeah, let's talk some quarterbacks to lead it off the bat. Cam Ward's the one. After that, is Shedeur the for sure number 2? Can Shedeur actually lead Cam Ward still? Or does he have potential to slide like 3 or 4? What are we seeing with him?
I could see a slide, man. One, because it seems like the top 10 is going to maybe shake out to where everyone gets their guy. I think the Giants might be the only one left holding, waiting for the quarterback. So I think the need may not be there for everyone. And then also it's just like, he's not for everyone. You hear him talking in interviews, you see his demeanor and you hear the whispers from the combine saying that like, he's told teams that like, he didn't want to necessarily go to them or didn't try to impress them in those interviews. So yeah, I do think there's not a big gap between him and Jackson Dart in a lot of teams' minds and just a lot of people's minds. I know a lot of people have Jackson Dart as QB2 and not Shedeur Sanders, but I do think there is a gap between Cam and Shedeur. It's just like physically there's a big gap. Shedeur's a lot skinnier. Shedeur has a lot weaker arm. Shedeur is probably not as athletic. So all those things, I do think Cam's pretty much the clear-cut number 1. That's not to say he's like Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels level prospect that we saw last year, but there's just the tier 2 in this class is they're day 2 guys in my opinion. And that's fine. It's just sometimes day 2 guys get made day 1 guys because of need. I just don't know if the need's actually going to end up being there.
Well, going off what you just said, put Cam Ward in last year's QB class. Where do you have him ranked with those guys?
He would have been my QB 5 in last year's class. So I had my top 4 was Caleb, Drake, Jaden, and Bo Nix. And then I would have had him behind that. And then I would have had Penix and then McCarthy. So that's where I would have put him. Which again, last year was a unique class. We saw how well those top 4 guys that I mentioned just did. So that's not like any knock on him whatsoever. I still think he's a very good prospect, but still not the level of how I felt about the top guys last year.
So you were a Bo Nix guy.
I love Bo Nix. I think I was driving the Bo Nix train. Not a lot of people were. I was all over it though.
Yeah, it's a very lonely boxcar, I think. I mean, we had Danny on this show saying that he would grow a beard and not shave if Bo Nix was taken in like the top, was it just the first round or top 10 that he said it? I think it was first round.
Yeah, I think it was first round.
Yeah, so Bo goes in the first round, and of course, Danny, being the man of the word that he is, he completely does not live up to the bet. He shaves immediately as soon as his wife gives him any sort of pushback. And
he's like, "Oh, my anniversary."
I was like, I didn't remember him with the beard, so he must have.
He had it for a good day and a half, and I think the biggest problem for Danny was it took him so long to grow the beard that he was kind of ashamed of it, and then he just immediately uses his wife as an excuse to get rid of it. So yeah, who is, like you mentioned, Jackson Dart. So you were high on Bo Nix last year. A lot of people were caught off guard by Bo Nix being a first-round pick, at least people who follow college closely. I know Michael Penix was the big shock pick going in the top 10, but who is the one quarterback in this class who you look at and say, this is a guy that might go a lot earlier than most people are expecting?
I think it's Tyler Shuck, the Louisville quarterback, because, what NFL teams, what makes a guy go higher? It's talent. It's like arm talent. It's physical capability. It's not necessarily what you've done on a football field already. It's like projecting out what a guy could do. And with him, looks the part, man. I mean, he's big. He's got a good arm. He ran a 4.63 at the combine. He can move. And yeah, he's got this awful injury history, but that's like the reason why he's this oddity as a 26-year-old quarterback coming into the NFL, is because every single year that he looked like he could have put it together, he got hurt. And so one year that he actually has a full healthy season, his tape was great this last year in a lot of ways that you want a quarterback to be great. I think he didn't take a lot of sacks behind a really porous offensive line the way Shedeur did. He was great under pressure in terms of finding his outlets versus blitzes and things of that nature. And then he did not have receivers that these other, top guys have. There's not a lot of Louisville receivers we're talking about in this draft class going top few rounds, and still made a lot of plays down the football field. So I think when we look at Shuck, he'll have some fans. Now, it's not to say he's going first round, but I'd be surprised if he lasts. I'd be very surprised if he lasts into day 3. I think he could very well go second round in this draft class. I think that's where we'll see maybe a few guys come off the board, just because these guys have played a ton of football, and Shuck specifically. That's the thing that if you look at last year with Jayden Daniels, Bo Nix, that I think matters when projecting to the NFL nowadays.
Does his age matter to teams, or hey, man, I'll get a guy who's going to be 27 in his final year of his rookie deal?
It matters a little. Obviously, you'd rather they be 22 with his experience of 4 years as a starter. But there's been Joe Burrow was 24 as a rookie. Kenny Pickett was 24. It doesn't matter as much for draft stock, and it's just more. Have you shown mastery at college level, in my opinion, nowadays? It's have you been able to master that game? Because if you have, and if it's, if you're Bo Nix's age or Michael Penix's age and it's year 5, year 6 for you, well, I'd rather have that than the guy who's not mastered, as we just saw with Caleb Williams. It can be, your head can be spinning and you can maybe never figure it out. But the guys who have played a ton of football, those are the guys that at least have a floor to them. And so I think that's what NFL teams are saying. It's yeah, maybe he's never going to be Patrick Mahomes coming in the NFL at this age, but you just need a guy who's a competent starter on a rookie deal, and you can build a ton around him at that point.
Yeah, but how often do you get a chance to draft a veteran leader at the quarterback spot? Tyler Shuck walks into your locker room and he's immediately the oldest man in the room already. He's ready to command that huddle. So you mentioned Shuck as a big arm guy. I'm high on Kyle McCord for a lot of the same reasons I think you are with Shuck, although I don't think McCord is anything the athlete as far as his mobility as Tyler Shuck is. What are your thoughts on McCord? Because, I think he comes from a similar situation where when you look at the Syracuse offense, they had a good run game and they had a Rondé Gadsden, but it's not as if he had a lot of top-tier talent at receiver he was working with, but I thought he had a very good season with the Orange.
I loved his tape this last year. There's so much NFL translatable stuff. The way he's able to play within timing of the offense was probably about as good as it gets in this draft class. And that's something that once you get to the NFL, you better be doing. You better be hitting downfield routes on the breaks, or else the windows close a lot faster. So he's very good at that. I do think he's limited athletically. That's going to be basically his biggest knock, is that everyone at the NFL today, everyone's chasing the guy who can create, who can do a little outside of structure. And I think he's good enough in structure that he can still get by without it. And he's got a good arm. But he also is kind of very up and down in terms of the turnovers. Like he's a guy that had a lot more turnover where he plays than other people in this draft class. And then there's also going to be the questions of why was Ohio State too big for him? He's not the first guy to need to transfer programs. Obviously, Bo Nix going from Auburn to Oregon, like that changed his future drastically. And so maybe he has matured and maybe he can handle a bigger stage right now, but he's even said like he thought there was too much pressure on him at Ohio State. Well, lo and behold, there's got to be a lot of pressure at you at the NFL level too. So I think that's also one of the bigger knocks on him, but he was awesome this past year. I'm not going to poke too many holes in his tape. And I think after, I do think the top three are going to be some combination of Ward, Dart, Shedeur. After that, it wouldn't surprise me if he's the fourth quarterback off the board.
Mike, let me ask you about this. So Ohio State dogged the hell out of this kid on the way out, right? Like they let it be known, like they did not want to keep him. So he goes to Syracuse, and in the ACC, basically every other year you have a really hard schedule or a really easy schedule. And last year, in year one under Fran Brown, they get McCord, and they get the easiest draw in the conference, like by a lot. The two good teams they played in the league were teams that had pretty abhorrent defenses, right? Like Georgia Tech's defense was not great. Miami's defense was putrid. Everybody else they played kind of flat out sucked, to be honest. How do you square, okay, Ohio State was done with this dude at a much higher level of competition with he goes to a lower level of competition, Syracuse, who then draws like the easiest draw in that lower level league? Like how, as an evaluator, like, does that matter?
It's getting harder in my sort of shoes with the way kind of conference realignment's gone. Obviously, if you're in the Big Ten, SEC, you're golden. But if you're in the Big 12 or the ACC, you may not be playing NFL players, right? You may not be actually going up against the schedule. And
just want to point out, Mike said that, not Bud. Big 12 fans to leave Bud alone.
Yep. I love the Big 12 for entertainment value.
But it's just like, it's a fact of life is that, when you see the Pittsburgh game where he had 5 picks, it's like that should be, a big swirling alarm bell. That's like, damn, like one of the better defenses, like one time on that schedule, if you have that sort of game, well, what would it have looked like if you played Georgia and Alabama? What would it have looked like if you were in the SEC week in and week out? So yeah, it's going to be more difficult for guys at that level to just properly evaluate, because you can never really quantify competition level. It's difficult to, but that's why NFL evaluators lean on and will give deference to the guys who played at the highest level consistently.
The other thing with when you watch Pitt tape, if you've gone to a Narduzzi clinic or any of his defensive guys, they don't like come out and say this, but they basically imply, at least this is the way I took it when I saw him 2 years ago in Orlando, that occasionally they're going to face a quarterback who can just figure out what they do and they'll just tip their cap. But they play college football. So they're running a defense that is high risk, high reward. They never blitz 5. They always blitz 6. Like if you can't figure out what they do, then you're not going to beat them. And most college quarterbacks can't figure it out. Whereas I remember we talked last year on this show about how Drake May is like, yeah, I got this. And he torched Pitt, twice. So I'm curious, like maybe we'll go back and watch like McCord against blitz specifically and see. I think one of those picks was a pretty bad tip, by the way, if I recall in that game. It seemed to kind of snowball on him, but that'll be interesting to watch. I do have to ask you about a guy who started the season fairly hot and came into the season with a ton of hype, killed Michigan, and then really kind of went in the tank from there. Like they made the playoff. He won a playoff game, won 2 playoff games. But with Quinn Ewers, how difficult of an evaluation is that for you? Because like the Michigan tape to me looks different than everything else.
Yeah, it's so weird. He really is, because obviously, the high school hype and who he was as a prospect. But then so many different other things in that. If you remember early on in his career, his deep ball was like one of the weirdest things I've ever seen, in that he used to throw these just rainbows. He just didn't have the feel for how to throw a deep ball. And the last 2 years, look at his receiving course. He had a guy who ran a 4.21 and a guy who ran a 4.35 in 2023. This past year, he had a guy who ran a 4.29 and a guy who ran a 4.39. And he wasn't out there attacking down the football field. And it's like, why? Well, I'm not sure he has it at that level of the football field. And then from his freshman year till now, the guy hasn't physically developed a lick, man. I mean, he is very skinny going to the NFL as a quarterback. And it's like, maybe if he was Jaden Daniels, you could forgive him, but he's gotten hurt 3 straight seasons and missed time. You need to be stronger to hold up in NFL pockets. And then there's just, he'll look like a god against some of the best competition, and then he'll play an awful team and go right and look like nothing special whatsoever. So definitely one of the hardest evals. I think because of all of that, it's very difficult to buy into him ever being a consistent top end guy. And especially with the injury history, it's just like, no one's going to really want to take that chance very highly, but very surprised he came out. But I do think he's kind of behind the pecking order right now, just because when a guy doesn't develop, right, when a guy isn't making year-on-year improvements, and I thought he had in that Michigan game, I'm like, oh man, he's turned the corner, but then gets hurt the next week and reverts back to the inconsistencies we saw. I don't think anyone's really going to take that chance. I'd be surprised if he goes top 100 at this point, in my opinion.
He strikes me as somebody who you're hoping has like a Gardner Minshew-esque NFL career, whereas it's like there will be teams that value him as a backup, but anybody who's forced into having to use him as a starter is not in a very good spot.
Yeah. Now it's more just like, is the guy going to lock in consistently? I think is the biggest thing with him. And this could be a wake-up call, right? It could be the wake-up call he needs, because at every point along the way, he's been kind of gifted and told he's, Great. God's gift to earth, right? He's number 1 overall recruit, gets a bag to go to Ohio State, gets a bag to go to Texas, and then just given the job from day one. And it's like, I think at some point he just needs that fire lit under him consistently. And we'll see if this is it.
Is Will Howard above the like Riley Leonard, Curtis Rourke, like that level?
I think so, just because the arm talent is better considerably. It's those guys, Riley Leonard, Curtis Rourke, they're kind of like bottom of the barrel NFL arm strength. It's like you better be doing everything else right to get by at the NFL level with that. Whereas Howard, very much looks the part. 6'5", great, well put together, can put it to every level of the defense. Now he's like very robotic, and while he's like kind of athletic, I don't think he utilizes his athleticism in any meaningful manner on a football field. So there's like big knocks to his game, and he's not particularly accurate, but that's just like the archetype. And more often than not, NFL teams are going to lean towards the archetype.
I feel like Will Howard's like a short burst athlete. Like he's effective in the red zone with his mobility, but you're never going to see him break a long run just because he just does not have that in him.
Yes.
He got hawked down in the championship game, didn't he?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Or was that the Texas game? I'm sure the chat, like the Cover 3 tailgate here, will fill us in. I remember him getting hawked down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So let's hit a break here. And then we come back. I want to kind of continue the discussion of like why scoring was down in the sport that we cover, and maybe ask Mike a little more about that, and maybe we can kind of get to the bottom of it. Quarterback was kind of illuminating here.
The clock never stops. Relive the greatest moments with uninterrupted highlights and more.
It's Gareth Bale! Ronaldo! Wonderful goal!
On the UEFA Champions League channel. Streaming free.
And we are back. First, though, I do want to tell you that what else is back? Brackets are back, and you can get in on the madness today at the CBS Sports app. Enter the bracket challenge for the chance to win a new Nissan Armada and trips to the 2026 Final Four. Wow. You can also run men's and women's bracket pools with friends and join our pool. Play today on the CBS Sports app. No purchase necessary. See terms and rules for details. Link in description.
Mike, you going to join our bracket group?
Dude, I have not watched a college football game in years, unfortunately. I feel like once I got like into NFL, every year I've just like lost more touch with other sports, and now I don't watch anything else. It's bad.
We have an episode for you then.
Yeah,
a little 20-minute, because I was in the same boat, and it's like I actually want to watch the tournament, and so we had Norlander on from CBS, and he was like, "You really haven't watched any college basketball?" Like, that's correct. And so I can name. Can you name any college basketball players?
Cooper Flagg.
Okay, that was what I named. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yep. Right.
I will exact same page.
I will be spending the rest of my day after we get finished here watching college basketball. This is one of my favorite times of the year. All day, live betting, just galore.
It's a little too nice here today for me to be inside watch college basketball. If I can find like an outdoor spot to bring a laptop, before I pick the boys up from school. We do have a Little League update, by the way. So Liam is still batting 1,000 on the year. So we did not have any additional meltdowns about the walk-up song. Mike, I don't know if you knew this or not, but he decided his walk-up song was not cool anymore. But he hit a double and then overran second base into the grass of the outfield and was tagged out. So he did make his first out on the base paths.
It's really overrunning.
He's too fast. Like he's simply the human body is not capable of slowing down when you move at his speed.
I'm like, how do we? Okay, all right, good hit, man. Come on, all right, great. So, oh man, all right. So let's get back into this here. College football this year wasn't boring, but it felt like it lacked the star power at the top, which kind of is reflected here. But we lost so many like legit awesome quarterbacks to the pros last year. You knew there would be kind of a drop off. I'm also noticing here, Mike, when I look at these consensus big boards, there's 10 defensive linemen in the top 50. That feels like a lot. And I'm curious, are they actually that good, or do the other premium positions, the quarterback and maybe your offensive tackles and those, like, do those just kind of suck in this draft? And so somebody's got to get drafted.
I think it is. The D linemen are good. There's just, and I think you saw a little bit of that combine. There's a lot of athletes in this defensive line class. Maybe not necessarily the most NFL ready guys, but it's a very good defensive line class. And I think it is a little bit of both. You look at just the traditional powerhouses that produce skill position talent to the NFL, Alabama's, Georgia's, they ain't walking through that door. There's not these, there's not a Jerry Jeudy. There's not a Justin Jefferson. There's that, like, it's just, there aren't those top end guys who have really been producing at the receiver position. So yeah, I think it's a combination of both. The defensive line, awesome. And then your wide receivers are coming from places like Arizona, Mizzou, not necessarily your top programs that are producing your best skill talent in this class.
Yeah, it's like I look at Tet McMillan, and we've been high on Tet for the last couple of years, going back to last season. And I think he was in a situation this year where the offense just wasn't good enough, and he was much better than everybody else on his team, and it just kind of hurt his stats. But as good as he is, he never struck me as the kind of receiver you'd see being the first off the board and going in like the top 5 in some mocks. It's like, I don't know about that. He feels like a mid-first round kind of talent to me, not like a top 5 talent.
Yeah, he's very much high floor, but probably also a low ceiling. You just see it with his athletic traits. He's not super explosive. He's not super fast. He's not going to wow anyone, one-on-one. There's not a lot of reps where it's like he completely clowns a guy, that you can point to. But he's going to catch every pass in his vicinity. He's going to be able to run the full route tree at his size. Both very valuable traits when projecting next level, but he's kind of more of like a T. Higgins than he is
that's who I compliment.
Again, than a Jamar Chase.
I remember like looking at him coming out of high school as well. And he played other sports at a very high level too. And he was obviously, he was with the quarterback there, Noah, but I don't think we ever had a verified time on him in high school that I can recall. And we still don't. It's very Marvin Harrison-esque in a way. Like, I don't think Harrison ever ran a good time in high school that I'm aware of. And I don't think ran at all in verified stuff as a junior or senior, maybe as a sophomore. At one point he did, and he kills it in college. He didn't run the combine, right?
Not last year.
Didn't run at his pro day either. Drake London didn't run either. That's like, I feel like kind of that mold where it's like, I wouldn't surprise me if Tet doesn't run just because.
We have a saying, fast guys run fast, right? Like if you're fast, you want to show it off. And if you don't run, I'm assuming you're slow. Like you may be good at other things, but did Harrison have a good year as a rookie?
Not up to expectations, right?
Yeah.
Like 900 something yards. Didn't go for 1,000. So
was it a speed thing?
Yeah. I mean, he did not look explosive, right? He didn't look. You just compare him to Malik Neighbors, and I actually ended up having Neighbors higher than him in that class because just like that's what wins at the NFL is explosive ability. You could be a great wide receiver, but you can't reach that top end unless you have real deal juice.
Is there anybody, because we got some guys in the chat here are saying for fantasy, they always grab all the top rookies at the skill positions. Anybody you think could really crush this year in fantasy?
I'm trying to think. I love some of the lower down the board tight ends that I think could be great in fantasy. I really like Terrence Ferguson from Oregon. He obviously blew up the combine. It's kind of like what it takes. You better be an athlete at tight end nowadays to produce. I like him. And I really like Harold Fannin from Bowling Green. And I just don't think that it's an accident that you end up being 50% of your team's offense, right, at the tight end position. So he's a wild projection, but I just think he's very talented, even if not the most athletic guy at the tight end position. So I like them. And there's some running backs, I think, down the board that could end up finding starting roles. Love Dylan Sampson from Tennessee. I think he is exceptional. I have him actually as my RB2 in this class. I think he is a plug and play bell cow at the next level, even if he doesn't fit that mold. But it could be like a Bucky Irving or Kyron Williams sort of bell cow. And I love two way down the board guys. Corey Krosky-Merritt, very much under the radar. Played one game for Arizona this year after transferring from New Mexico. He's got some of the best feet in this draft class. He went to the Shrine Bowl as the Shrine Bowl MVP at the week of practice. So I think he's very talented. And then Jordan James from Oregon. He's not unbelievably physically gifted, but he runs the way you got to run the NFL. He has great pacing, great vision, runs really hard. So those are my kind of guys at the skill position that I like.
While we're on the subject of running backs, we see Ashton Jenty going in the top 10 a lot, sometimes even higher. I really liked Ashton Jenty in college. I wrote in my mock draft last week, though, one of the things I haven't really seen mentioned enough, because everybody's just kind of assuming Ashton Jenty is going to be great at the NFL level. He's 5'8". There have been 4 running backs in the history of the NFL who have rushed for more than 4,500 yards in their career at 5'8" or shorter. Do you have any concerns about him going as early as he's projected to go, especially compared to with what you just mentioned with other running backs down the board?
I wouldn't take him that high. I wouldn't, because in this class uniquely, you'll probably find a starter in the 3rd round who's, not as good as Ashton Jenty, but very good. But I do think, he's probably not for every team at that size. He's going to have a difficult time. It's just like, that's a small target to hit in the passing game, even though he's got great hands. It's not like you can feature him really with that and be consistent with it. And small guys are, more oft injured, but I watch his tape and I'm like, he's Maurice Jones-Drew. Maurice Jones-Drew, I don't know if he was 5'8", but he's one of the 4. And I'm just like watching him, like, that is what I'm looking at. So I think it's just a rarity more that 5'8" guys even get a chance in college. Like, you got to be special to even get that chance in the first place. And so I think he's a guy that breaks the mold, in my opinion.
Maurice Jones-Drew is one of the 4. And as I wrote, if you take a top 10 pick on Ashton Jenty and you get Maurice Jones-Drew, you're probably happy with that pick overall. One of the other 4 is Barry Sanders. I think you would take him in the top 10. Yeah. But then the 3rd highest is Joe Morris, who was perfectly fine for the Giants back in the 80s, and then Devontae Freeman. It's like, is that who you want with a top 10 pick?
He's better than Devontae Freeman.
I agree, but
MJD
Devontae did not have a top gear.
No.
Yes.
And I don't want to sound like I'm piling on Ashton Jenty, because I do like Jenty a lot. It's just, we have to also remember where he played in college. It's not like he was taking NFL hits every single game. He was playing against Mountain West defenses for the most part. So it's going to be interesting. I think my ultimate point is, if you're taking Jenty in the top 10 and he has the kind of career where you would want, if you're using a pick that high, that's an outlier result. That is not a typical result. And I think that's a big risk to be taking on a running back in the top 10.
I think the wild card here is, I don't know how many people know this, but we knew Gabe. We knew Jenty pretty well coming out of high school, because Gabe Brooks, our Texas guy, was all over him. He was actually all-district Texas 5A receiver as a junior. And Boise didn't throw the ball to him a whole lot, but like, he can catch pretty well and actually run some real routes. I don't really know why like they didn't use him more in that role. You would think it would keep some like, hits off of him, but they didn't. I think if you're going to take him that high, you also have to like him probably more as a receiver. As
a sophomore, they used him. I think he had almost 50 catches as a sophomore.
Mm-hmm. And they had the OC change, right?
Yeah,
the coordinator.
And he didn't drop many balls. Like, he has good hands. If you just watch him catch, it's pretty natural for him. So obviously, as a junior or all district receiver, it's not surprising.
That makes sense. I think this kid's really good, but that is high to take him. But who else are you going to take? Okay, so if you're going to take a D lineman over him, like, who are the D linemen we were absolutely betting on in this draft?
That's good. See, I don't think after Abdul Carter, there's like a sure thing defensive lineman. Last year, I actually felt like all 3 of the top guys was Verse, whether it was Laiatu Latu or Dallas Turner. I'm like, yeah, I think they're all like just going to be good. Maybe not right away, but I feel very confident about it. This year, there's just like the guys are just freak athletes, whether it's James Pierce Jr., who obviously, 4.47, whether it's Mike Green, who I think is going to be very good, but like has a very small frame for a defensive end. Jalen Walker, who's like this weird off ball, on ball hybrid, never really rushed the passer much, but probably has the best tape rushing the passer of any of these guys after Abdul Carter. So there's a lot of like nits to pick in this edge class. Shamar Stewart, one of the biggest freaks of all time, but like dude never did a darn thing at Texas A&M. 1.5 sacks last year. So it's a very boom or bust edge class. But one thing is that off the edge, athletic traits, we did the studies when I was back at PFF. That is the position that more than any other on an NFL football field, you bet on that ends up leading to long-term production in the NFL. That you get Trayvon Walker going number 1 overall. It's like that still works. That makes your job a lot easier once you get to the NFL. So even if there's not a lot of guys where I'm like, yeah, I can for sure say he's going to be good, there are a lot of guys who it's like they have everything to develop. And once you get them in their building, you should be able to have them figured out by year like 3.
Yeah, that's actually what I was going to ask you next is like you look at you watch the combine and you see the way that these guys perform. And you mentioned like a Shamar Stewart who absolutely destroys it at the combine, but you look at his production on the field, it's like, okay, well, that doesn't really line up. But like when it comes to like, say, looking at an RAS score, what positions do you think you just mentioned obviously edge rushers, but where do you think it's more important that you have an athlete over production? And where do you think production is more important than being an athlete?
So edge, definitely athlete. Cornerback, to a degree, you need athletes. You better have something. You better have the ability to make up ground or change directions at a high level. Like those two positions are probably the two most premium that I put athletic traits on. That like you better have it. After that, honestly, offensive tackle is one where you trend towards athletes. You just look at some of the best tackles the past decade: Trent Williams, Lane Johnson, Teron Armstead. They were the 3 like the best testing athletes of the past decade too. Like you need to be able to block the guys who are the freaks. You need to be able to freak yourself. So those 3 are probably where I'm looking. Honestly, after that, linebacker probably is one where you just like it helps. And you see a lot of linebackers get drafted super highly just based off of that. Quay Walker comes to mind. But after that, I think interior offensive line is where I'm leaning skill. How good are you at the sport right now? And if you have like a baseline level of traits, you can probably get it done. I think running back, yeah, you want explosiveness, but it is also like contact balance. There's like a number of different factors that go in once you get to the NFL level. And I think wide receiver is the one where it's like, I don't not care about athletes at all, but you got to just watch the way the guy moves. Does he move fluidly? That's really all that matters at the wide receiver position. We've seen, again and again, guys who don't test worth a damn. Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, Devontae Adams didn't test that well coming out. Like, you just need to be a fluid athlete, and continually the guys that just get drafted highly because they ran a 4.3 and jumped 40 inches, the Christian Watsons of the world. It's hard to figure that position out at the NFL level. It's much more innate skill than physical capability.
I think receiver is one where, like, as the GPS data becomes more reliable, it's going to get easier to scout.
Yeah.
Some of those guys, like some of those guys, the way they decelerate to create space. I remember watching the study on James Harden, and he was like, not gonna say he was a terrible athlete in all of the other measured categories, but he was among NBA players pretty poor in almost everything. And then he was like 99th percentile in like size adjusted deceleration, which, I mean, that's a skill like for a big guy in basketball, but also slots, tight ends, like guys who don't run down the field every time. Like, not everybody can be DK Metcalf, where I just would prefer you never stop on the route. Like, I just need you to keep moving the entire time, right? It's some of these guys have to stop and get open in compressed areas. And I wonder, like, if the drills that we run at the combine, if they don't show us that like quite as well as maybe some of the GPS stuff could, or if there's better measures for it, like force plates and other stuff.
I love that you brought that up, because it's something that I've banged the table for years. Is not, being able to start's great, being able to stop's better. Antonio Brown's superpower as a wide receiver in the NFL was not running fast in a straight line. Ran 4.57 coming out. It was the ability to run a 4.57 and stop in his tracks at any point in time, because then you're always off balance as a corner. If a guy can do that, you are screwed. the vertical tree, basically. So it's something that's wildly important, if not more important. And I think why the track guys, why like the true 4.2 and 4.3 guys, is because track running, the form that it takes is not conducive to stopping. It's conducive. It wants to keep you going in a straight line. It's the guys that run kind of weird, the guys that kind of like go side to side a lot. They're the ones that are actually better at moving laterally at full speed or close to full speed. That's why I ignore the 40 for wide receivers, is because it's just a completely different animal in the sort of, I much rather take a guy who jumps 40 inches, broad jumps 11 feet and runs a 4.6 than a guy who runs, low 4.4 or low 4.3s, but has like a 32-inch vertical and a 10-foot broad jump. It's like you want the guy who's short area explosive and then can stop. Much more important.
I love it. All right, let's hit a second break here, and we come back. Mike has some hot takes for us. Chat's going to grade him. We're going to grade him, yell at him a little bit. Let's do it.
I feel home when I see the faces that remember my own. When I'm with my friends, I feel home.
We really should just run the Masters commercial year round. Like, I know we have other stuff to promo, but like it. And unless Yellowstone's like actually coming back, like I'm all in on.
I agree, 100%.
Like the whole world watches NCIS on 3 TVs per night. It's like we don't really need to promo that. All right, Mike, you got any hot takes for us on this NFL draft? We're going to kind of grade them as college fans.
I got a bunch. I think my biggest hot take though this year is that Dillon Gabriel is this year's version of either Russell Wilson or Brock Purdy or whatever, like mid-late round quarterback who just like becomes a good starter. I think Dillon Gabriel, I've watched him since his freshman year at UCF, and guys played nothing but good football. And compared to everyone else in this draft class, they played a lot of football. No one's ever played more football than Dillon Gabriel entering the NFL. He started as a true freshman in high school, threw for more yards in Hawaii history than anyone else. Started as a true freshman at UCF, started more games in college football than anyone else. And every single stop, guys play good football. Now, it's 5'10.5", but I talked to this guy at the combine. His personality, his ability to just like be comfortable wherever he is unique, and it will play in an NFL locker room very, very quickly. Obviously, like, the height is going to be the biggest thing talked about, but like his arm's good. It's better than Shedur's. He has good NFL arm talent. It's not elite, but it's better than a lot of guys being very successful around the NFL. So I just think he has it. And will he ever end up top 5 to 10 star in the NFL? Probably not. But if he's on a rookie deal and you draft him in the 3rd round, if he's just giving you average NFL starter play, you're in a great spot to build a winner around him. So that's my probably biggest take, is I just think Dillon Gabriel has it.
Disagree. I think Dillon Gabriel's ceiling is NFL backup.
Okay.
And maybe he's a quality NFL backup, but I do not think he has enough zip in that arm to be effective at the next level. At least
I think it's stronger than Brock Purdy's,
consistently.
Right? Yep.
Is it?
I think it is.
I watched Dillon throw downfield, and I don't feel like there's a whole lot of zip in there. I feel like it's kind of Quinn Ewers-y.
He throws that Quinn Ewers go ball, or like that rainbow ball well to run under it. I will say, I think we talked about this in the coverage for group chat when we had, it was him, Cade, who was the guy who couldn't transfer to Auburn because he didn't have enough credits, and so we had to go crawling back to Liberty.
Caden Salter.
Caden Salter, right. And then honestly, like, I thought Gabriel threw it better than Cade and better than Salter that day. But I didn't think any of them looked anywhere near like the previous year. We had Daniels and a bunch of other guys out there. It was like, oh, this is how it's supposed to look, guys. Like this year, it was like, yeah, okay. I know Cam was not out there, obviously, and Shedeur was not out there. I don't know. Like he's not wide either. Like he's a smaller frame dude. This is such an interesting draft class too, because I mean, like Ohio State kicked McCord to the curb, right? And Oklahoma was like, yeah, we're cool if Gabriel leaves. We like Jackson Arnold better, who they gave up on like five games into the season. I mean, it's wild that guys who had them on campus for a whole year and coached them were cool letting them go. I don't know what that says, but I don't hear, nobody bashes him. So I don't know. Maybe this works. All right, what else you got?
Gosh, what else do I have? I think Willie Lampkin's going to be a starting NFL center. I guess I'm going like all the short guys here, but the North Carolina guard, who
He
is
is tiny.
also 5'10".
Yeah.
I think he's going to be a starting NFL center. I'm not actually as worried about the height because he has long arms for his size. He actually has a bigger wingspan than Will Campbell, which is wild to think about. But it's the weight. I mean, he's 270. 270 is tough. I don't think there's been a guy that light along the offensive line in like 40 years. So he needs to get bigger in that regard. But if he gets to like 285, that's where, gosh, why am I blanking on his name? The Dolphin center is playing at Aaron Brewer. He's playing in like the mid 280s. I think he can do it in the right scheme. I just see a guy who's he's the best on tape interior offensive lineman in terms of skill. Like he uses his hands well. He plays with great leverage, obviously. He runs his feet. Like he can move people off the line of scrimmage, even if he's not the most physically imposing guy. But I see enough that guy can start in the league. And again, it's going to take the right scheme, but I'm sold. I'm sold on him.
I just, like you said, the leverage, I just keep thinking of my high school coach telling me to get lower. And I'm like, well, Willie Lampkin's got that down pat.
Yes.
He was a state champion wrestler at Lakeland. Willie was.
Yeah. Not surprising when we watch tape.
He wrestled at 285 or at the 285 and under weight class. So and went undefeated on the year. So like obviously the guy, he uses all of that 280 like very, very effectively. And he does have long. I remember, so that was when Jamie Chadwell was at Coastal, and they were super stoked to get him as a prospect. Kind of one of those kids they won't talk about like until the paper side. Another school could swoop in. Even when Carolina took him as a transfer from Coastal, they were still like a little like, he is tiny. Like, is this going to work in the ACC? So I guess you keep betting on a guy. And center is kind of a technique thing too.
Yep.
Like, I don't need to be a freak. I just need you to like know what you're doing and be able to react quickly in compressed area, I guess. You got to have some ass to you, but yeah.
You just mentioned Lampkin has longer arms than Campbell. And going back to what you were saying earlier with like tackles, does his arm length compared to his athleticism, where do you view him as a prospect?
Well, it's wingspan. I think they're actually about the same arm length, but wingspan, he's got a big wingspan. He's got much broader shoulders. And that's the bigger worry to me with Campbell. It's not that, 32 and a half. It's just that he can't get, when you have tight shoulders, short arms, your ability to your sphere of influence, how much you can react to an inside move is just so much more limited than a guy there are starting NFL offensive linemen who have a foot bigger wingspan than him. Just think about how much a foot can get you in either direction against, an NFL edge rusher that runs a 4.4. You're trying to block Chop Robinson. It's like he goes inside move on you and you can react quickly, but you just don't have the ability. You just don't have the just length from your center of mass to go get that guy. So that's the more worrisome thing to me, especially when going to the NFL, because I already saw it at times. I think the Texas A&M game when he faced, I'm blanking on his name. Who's the guy that came back Texas A&M? The edge rusher was like twitched
Gordon?
up. No. The undersized
not
one.
Not Shamar. Oh, Turner?
No. Those guys are all in the draft here. It's whatever the third string defensive end is, who's like really tuned up, undersized guy. He struggled with him just even finding him. So I think that's my biggest worry. And because of that, I just think he will have a tough time at tackle. I think he's going to be awesome at guard, but I think he'd have a tough time at tackle.
Cassius Howell?
Yep. That's that one.
I remember at Future 50, so Walter Nolan came in like fairly good shape, and they were letting Walter Nolan rush off the edge, and he whipped Campbell. And that's Walter Nolan. Who
I love Walter Nolan. So
hit him like when he's right, he's different. For sure.
Yeah, I love Nolan. He's 12th on my board. I think he's going to be awesome.
He's my number one DT in this class.
Oh,
but no, number two. He's behind Graham.
Okay. Yeah, he's in my number 2 also.
Yep.
All right, I'm going to save the Michigan having 4 top 20 picks and having like a 5-loss season for something different. But Mike, what other hot takes you got here?
So everyone in this wants to talk in the safety class about Malachi Starks, Nicky Manwari. Love those two guys. Not going to denigrate them. I just think Kevin Winston Jr. for Penn State's in that mix. I think he is as good as those guys, I think he could end up being the best safety in this draft class. He just tore his ACL week 2. So you didn't get to see it, but there's a reason he's still declared. It's because sophomore tape was insane. And even that week 1 tape, you see a guy who comes downhill and tackles better than anyone else in the safety class. He is so physical. He is big, massive wingspan for a safety. I just love his tape. And it wasn't even a full tear of his ACL. I think it was a partial tear. I'm not sure that makes it any better. It's still an ACL, whatever. But I watch his tape and I'm like, that to me looks like a first round safety. I can go in the first round because of the ACL, but I think it's a triumvirate up top of the safety class, and I put Winston in it.
I also think we're kind of reaching a point where you just kind of trust Penn State safeties. Like they do a pretty good job of producing.
Developing them. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. You put him on a team that runs a lot of cover too. Because I don't know about the coverage stuff. I think that's kind of the question. Does he get back to that level? But he destroyed the Mountaineers in that game. He was all over the field.
Yeah.
All right. We got time for what? Probably 2 more hot take. What are we going up in spice?
All right. I have Kyle Williams, the Washington State wide receiver, as top 50 player in this draft class.
I can't
believe I haven't seen a lot of hype for this guy, but he's got, you talk about like GPS numbers. His ability on a football field to move efficiently is better than whatever he tested. He ran a 4.4, whatever, but you watch him, it's just like he runs away from guys. No one can touch him at the line of scrimmage. He just reminds me so much of Darnell Mooney and his tape coming out of Tulane. And obviously Mooney was drafted 4 rounds too late. I think Williams is going to be drafted maybe a couple rounds too late. And it's just like, I didn't see a guy get open more often than Kyle Williams on tape this past year at Washington State. So at that point, I don't care if he's 5'9.5" or 5'10". I don't care if he's 182 pounds. The guy gets open on a football field. I'd love to have him on my team.
Where do you think he's going now?
I don't know. It's hard to project. And again, I haven't seen a lot of people I trust in evals. He's not even in their top hundreds. So, so I'd be surprised, I guess, if he goes day 2, maybe back into day 2, if I'm pumping his tires up enough and a couple of my buddies who are with teams see it. But no, I don't. He could end up going day 3. I mean, Mooney went 5th round, so it wouldn't surprise me if he ends up going like 4th.
I guess the only thing I would push back on this is when he played the Power 5 teams they played, 1 catch, 21 against Texas Tech, 3 for 22 against Washington, and then he kills like a dead San Jose defense, 8 for 132. New Mexico, for a while, I had rated as the literal worst defense in the entire country.
Great for overs.
Right. God, yeah. Like, and I believe I had Kyle on my college fantasy team this year. That was very helpful. I was a big fan of his work. He did crush Syracuse in the bowl game, which I don't know. Like, I mean, bowl games to me are increasingly, I don't know about for evaluation purposes, but for like to get meaning as far as the team quality, I don't really care about them as much. But man, also, if you're an Oklahoma fan listening to this, you're not like super in love with the idea that maybe Mateer had like a sneaky second round quality guy he was throwing to against Mountain West competition, because then you kind of start to think about Mateer a little bit, like what is he really? That's interesting. All right, last one, we'll get you out of here. Really appreciate you coming on. Everybody needs to listen to Pushing the Pile. Awesome show.
All right, I mean I got a bunch in this class just because I think it's all over the map, the evals and stuff, but I'll just say that I think Travis Hunter is a wide receiver at the next level. I think you're just wasting value to not play him at wide receiver. I think he's on par, maybe not on par just because he didn't play there full time, but like as far as the athlete is, he's on par with guys like Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison Jr., Roman Dunze from last year, the way we talked about those guys. I think he's that. He has unbelievable ball skills. And now ball skills are great at corner. Obviously, that leads to picks. Ball skills are also great at wide receiver. And like he dropped, I think, 3 passes his entire collegiate career. Truly like Larry Fitzgerald level of locating the football in the air. Why would you want that, 7 times a year, 6 times a year to happen at corner instead of 120 times a year at wide receiver, where that guy could really separate himself? So, and you just look at how much wide receivers get paid versus how much corners get paid. It's like a $10 million difference. So I'm using him at wide receiver. Obviously he wants to play both, but like his main focus, in my opinion, would be at wide receiver. He's just so good at that side of football. I'm
not mad about it because I get it, but I think that Travis will be a top 10 corner the minute he's on somebody's roster. And
I'm not. He's insane. He's insane.
Yeah, I do wonder, like, do you think it plays a role? Because we talked about how like kind of lackluster this wide receiver class is. Do you think the overall grade on the wide receiver class might be pushing you more towards like, shit, this guy should just play wide receiver?
Yeah, especially if he's there for you and you're the Patriots, right? If it's number 4 overall, say it goes Cam Ward, Abdul Carter, Shedeur Sanders. You draft him and playing him at wide receiver, right? You have corners there. You just signed Carlton Davis. You had Christian Gonzalez. Yep. You're not passing on Travis Hunter to go Mason Graham, right? Or go elsewhere. So you're drafting him and you're playing him at wide receiver because that's your need, and he's that good at it.
Does it depend on who takes him? Because like I don't think I've ever seen a guy play like that good, like zone coverage. I kind of liken him like a great base stealer in baseball who just takes a lead that's just absurdly large. Like there's no way you should be that off the bag, but he gets away with it. And I mean, you would see him. I've probably seen this kid play not thousands, but like high hundreds of reps of 7-on, where it's just coverage and like he's just kind of freelancing thing, but like still gets over there and makes some. Back when we had Vine, I think we had Vine back when he was a sophomore. Anyway, like I remember like some of these early vertical reels, they went nuts. It was like he's not even on the frame, and he comes in just making these diving picks all the time. I think I'd want to play him as a zone corner full time, and then like I don't think he's a 4.3 guy. I don't think he's crazy. I think he's quicker than he is fast as far as long speed. I'd like to play him in the red zone because I think he's a really good jumper, and I think his hands are great. Like I'd like to be like a zone corner, and you get red zone reps. That way, I don't have to worry about you practicing with the offense, and you don't have to block all that much.
100%. Like his man coverage is not special. You go back to the J.C. Horn, Patrick Surtain class. Those guys were man corners. He's not as good as them in man coverage, but he is the best zone corner I've seen. Like just his ability to midpoint zone, 2 routes and then break on one and like sell a quarterback on throwing to one that he knows he's going to go to, and just being like so many high level reps. They're just like, damn, I'm intrigued by that. I want that in my defense. But also it's like, man is traditionally the more valuable skill set. Teams go towards man corners. That's how CJ Henderson goes 9 overall, just because the thought that he could be a man corner. Right. So yeah, again, and like people have asked franchises like, where do you have him evaluated at? Which is dumb, because if they have 3 starting wide receivers, they're obviously going to have him evaluated as a corner. If you have 3 starting corners, you're going to have his evaluated as wide receiver. It's just like, that's how the NFL works. So I do think it's going to be team by team. But again, like if I'm looking at the teams that are up there, and if it's the Patriots, I think he's a wide receiver for them.
Do you like him as a yak guy? Like when the ball in his hands, I don't know that I've ever thought he's like crazy NFL level special. Like I think getting the ball into his hands, he's elite at. I don't know about with it in his hands. If he's a guy, I'm like, yeah, I have to find creative ways to get him the ball.
No, I don't think he's, Malik Neighbors level. I think he's good, capable. But also I do think once he gets to the NFL, you'll see a guy get a lot stronger. To be in the shape he was in, to play the snaps he did, you can't maintain muscle mass the way you need to at the NFL level to not get hurt, right? So I think he'll put on about 10 more pounds, and that should help him be a better weapon after the catch.
Makes sense. Mike, really had fun, man. Tom, you got anything else?
No, I'm good. Thanks for coming out, Mike. I enjoyed it.
For sure.
Renner, hit us with the socials. Hit us with the show schedule. Where can we find you, man?
Yeah, you can find me at Mike Renner _ on X. You can find Pushing the Pile wherever you get your podcast. We've kind of been all over the place with show schedules because I've been at every event over the past month on the NFL calendar. But I think next week we do a Monday draft show, and then we do Tuesday, Thursday, 9:30 a.m. More NFL focused shows.
Awesome, man. We'll be listening. Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you.